Well, I'm very excited to be here with a special guest who's going to be talking about life with schizotypal personality. So maybe just to start out with, what were some of your earliest signs of having a schizotypal personality?
For me, the earliest signs would be in when I was a kid, I'd obsess over small things like numbers. I've always had a big thing about numbers. I didn't get along with kids in my age group only because there's a level of anxiety there that's not based off of what they think of me. Because I'm not embarrassed. I just think they already perceive me in a negative light. So I'm always trying to combat that. Um, I just didn't get along with other kids. I didn't know why. I felt like, there's the generic thing where they had like an invisible handbook. I didn't feel like that. But I felt like no matter what I said, they wouldn't understand. Just that I could not express my words because with language, I see it differently. One word may mean something to someone else, and then it means something else to me. I can't remember the specifics, but in kindergarten, like even way back then, I was having a full like meltdown because someone did not understand. They were my good friend. They came over to my house. My parents was friends with theirs. I just felt so misunderstood, and that's the main thing. I'm okay if people don't like me. It is not about their what they think of me, as long as they perceive me for what I am. But then I'm always trying to be in the best light. So I'll be like, no, you don't understand. And even if I feel like they do, I'm trying to change it just a little bit so I feel accepted. Um, Another big thing would be that when I was younger, I just I wasn't interested in always being with people. I'm very fine on my own. So there would be times where I'd make friends and then keep them. And then there would be times where I wouldn't like them. I'd keep friends around and I'd just be like, I don't really need friends. Then I'd distance myself from them. So there was a really big disconnect with if I actually want to be friends with people, you want it until you have it. And that's been the biggest struggle growing up. I was actually homeschooled from sixth grade to high school. I graduated with my GED last year. I didn't have a lot of time to connect with people in real life. So online, mostly that's where that's coming from, where I'd really want to impress someone and be their friend. And then I'd get to that point and I'd be like, okay, I don't want to anymore. Because I assume they meet me and they're like, oh, okay. They don't really mind. They don't really care. It's a lot of mental gymnastics. And I think that was the biggest challenge is communicating, especially as a child, because that's when you have the least communication skills.
Thank you so much for your answer to that. And kind of building off of that, at what point did you realize that these traits may be related to schizotypal personality? And or would you be willing to explain a little bit about what the diagnostic process for STPD is like?
Absolutely. It's for me, I have OCD, a lot of obsessions. Like I said, when I was younger, starting back from even before going to school in kindergarten, I would have ruminations because it doesn't really present as OCD. I was just looking at this earlier about um, how it all mixes up and how it's so hard to get a diagnosis because it overlaps with autism and OCD so much and other schizoaffective disorders. Uh, so I would sit up at night and actually cry when I was just like 5 because there's a ball in my head that spins on a track and I couldn't get it to stop and I didn't know how. I thought that was so normal. And then one day I was just aware that, oh, I have OCD. I didn't know what it meant because I was so young, but I knew I had it. And it's the same level of awareness with STPD. Um, I'm sure I was looking at it. I have a huge interest in psychology because not only do I want to help people who feel misunderstood, I'm very aware of not being able to communicate, but it helps me express how I feel better, knowing not only terminology, but different why certain things happen and why I feel certain ways based off stimuli or how people react to me. And I was looking at how, oh, and I totally blanked. That's another thing. So spacey. It's impossible to keep a train of thought. But about how the obsessive part is not based on like one specific thing. It's Oh my goodness, I completely lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about?
Sorry, it took me a little bit to unmute. We were talking about, well, what stood out to me and what you were saying is the overlap between OCD and autism and STPD.
Oh, I was looking at just anything about OCD. I have a lot of OCD. I've gone through therapy. You know, at one point I would not touch the color green because obviously purple is my favorite color. And I perceive that as the opposite of purple. It is on the color wheel, but the OCD treatment did not work for me. I was on medication for OCD, and I still am, but just other medication too that is more on par with treating what I have. And that is because the obsessions and compulsions are not standard. They're almost based in non-reality. That's why ideas of reference magical thinking, it isn't like I'm scared something's gonna happen. I'm leveling out like an XP bar in a video game. I want it, it's like however full it is, that's how much luck I have. I'm obsessed with keeping it full of imaginary luck. So it's very much not standard. And I assume I came across it because I was looking at things like autism, because the diagnoses, I've been to so many doctors, and not even just for mental health, but health too. And I'm just so complex that no one can give me a real answer. So that's why I do a lot of research. And I was like, well, I don't have autism. What is it? And it really lines up every single piece because it kind of is autism and OCD and schizophrenia all in one. It has so many bases. With the diagnostic process, again, it's not very common. They don't just throw the label around. I've been to like only one or two psychiatrists, but both have said, you know, in my main pediatrician who was specialized in adolescent mental health, they don't know what to do for me. And my pediatrician actually was specialized in ADHD. She had ADHD herself and went to conferences to speak about ADHD and how to go about treating and diagnosing it. But you know, she diagnosed my brother in-house. One session, she was like, yeah, you can be medicated for it, we can do this. With me, she said, no, you need a full evaluation. There's not any way to know what's going on unless you sit down and have multiple tests. That's obviously expensive and takes a lot of time. It would be multiple visits with multiple doctors, most likely. And I don't have the time for that. I don't have the money for that. So the best course of action so far for me is just treating it. And I'm very lucky to be so self-aware that I understand that my, you know, ideas of reference and magical thinking are not based in reality. And that's a whole thing where when you're faced with it, you can kind of say, okay, I challenge this belief, it's not real. But then when I'm alone, automatically I think about it again. Best thing to do is medicine. You know, I've been to therapy, but because of the level of the anxiety does not go down with time. You will always be faced with the same level of, they probably think this of me. And even if you like, I had a therapist for 2 years and I just never could talk to her about it, about certain things. And so therapy just doesn't work great. Medication is what I really say. And I'm just very lucky to be self-sufficient and really good at coping on my own.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I especially appreciate the point you highlighted about how sort of the more comprehensive evaluations, especially in complex cases, are not fast or accessible for a lot of people. And also how therapy, I imagine, can be more challenging. One sort of, it's a little bit of a jump in topic, but the next question is how STPD has influenced your experiences in school. And I think from what you shared in our pre-interview, being pushed out of school early. And is there anything that you wish your classmates and teachers had understood about STPD?
Obviously, when I was that age, like I said, I went to a public school from kindergarten to 6th grade. Halfway through 6th grade, I left public school and I did homeschool. I didn't necessarily do any curriculum. I was really smart and got my GED at 17, so I really didn't do a lot of schooling. There was a period where I went to a private homeschool group that was held in a church. So people who had a teaching certificate, they sat down and taught you through textbooks. What I wish had happened more, especially in public school, there's no real way to look at a child that young and say they're going to grow up and have STPD, or, you know, a lot of things are triggered in adolescence. And when I got to 5th or 6th grade, I felt out of place with my gender identity and sexuality. And obviously where I live, that's a bit of a taboo topic. That really pushed me out of the social circles I was already in. I wasn't popular, but I was not unpopular by any means. So I was really isolated, and that didn't help with the feeling that, these people think I'm different. So sixth grade came and I was picked on not only by kids, it was mostly teachers. They did not approach me in a way that I could understand or handle. So I'd get in trouble for just also things that I didn't do. It would be associated with my friends doing something, and they approached me about it and told me to fix it or something. It was very strange, and it was not something I could understand, especially because when I'm very rejection sensitive. If I think you're even getting on to me for something that I understand I did wrong, or maybe you're just correcting me politely. I have one of my upper people above me at work. She's not exactly a manager, but she tells me what to do. She gave me a compliment. She told me I'm a very capable adult. I take that as her negatively talking to me. She thinks I'm stupid. She doesn't want me around her, that she wants me to just leave her alone. So it was really hard when a teacher approached me about anything, unless it was positive. And even then, there's that spike in anxiety when they want to talk to you. I wish they would. Teachers as a whole have so much going on. I think I wish they had more time to just sit down with the student individually. And I think there's a lot more than just the classic autism and learning disabilities like dyslexia that could use more special help and care. But obviously, that is a very broad issue. Anything I say for STPD can be applied to a lot of things. It's just attention and going slow and understanding. In my private school, I did actually face where I'm not diagnosed, and this was when I was a little bit younger, so nothing was as prominent, but the teachers just blatantly, in a class of 4 people, it just did not teach me, would not. And that was opposed to teaching someone else who had learning disabilities, which I'm all for, but I just felt neglected. So that was not a real school, mind you, but I've never really had a good terms with authority at all. Schools just do not mix with anyone who has an issue with being told what to do or slightly corrected. Just understanding is the only thing that can be put out there for that.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, and I'm genuinely sorry that you've had such difficult experiences with schools and with teachers. Yeah, not acting appropriately in many instances. The next question is, I guess, kind of going forward in life a bit, how has STPD influenced your experience with work?
I recently got my first job at a trampoline park, and it is going great for me because I didn't go to high school. I didn't have a lot of social experience in my teenage years. I'm 18 now, which is another reason it's hard to get a diagnosis. These things, you wait till later in life to make sure it's not any other pre-existing anything else, which is completely fine. It is not something to be thrown around lightly. Like I said, at work, there have been times where someone says something to me and I just take it really hard. I could feel myself like physically shut down, and I'll like tear up and I can't talk because I feel the need to defend myself. But I also understand that me defending myself and getting defensive, that's going to make this situation worse because it's just a passing comment for them. It is not going to phase them like it's phased me. That's that level of understanding that I have, because I can know this feeling is not forever. When I understand a lot of people in that moment, that is their everything. And that's why I'm really sympathetic towards them. And I'm all about understanding. At work, there's been no issues aside from the one real time that someone made a comment and I was like, okay, what does that mean? I just overthink it. And then I step back. I don't have any issues working with customers or people around me. That's mostly because I'm working with kids. It's a lot. You don't have to be serious. You just joke around with them. And that's kind of something I'm already really good at. That's what I plan to do, is go into working with kids and go into early childhood development in college. So that's like my strong suit. I've got like the best job for me, other than, having this first time where I'm actually perceived. I didn't go to school. I didn't have a lot of people around me. I want to look nice for my coworkers and obviously for my the people who employ me. That is a lot of pressure, and I do feel a lot of anxiety. I definitely see the factor where anxiety does not diminish. Every day I go into work and I have a surge of like panic. I have to go sit in the break room, and I take a moment, which is absolutely fine. A lot of people, I'm sure, experience that with anxiety. It's just something I definitely notice every single day going into work. I just can't get over it. But until I've been there for a few minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, there's nothing going on. I can just go do my job. Overall, I'm doing really good. Again, just be mindful of how you talk to people. That's the only thing that's been an issue. And then it's on their end to also work with you and understand where you're coming from, because communication it's cut and dry, but how people receive it is very messy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm still learning in my own life, I think. And the next question is, what advice would you give to clinicians who want to work with people who have STPD?
Like I've been saying, just be mindful. The way we perceive the world is really insane. Just there's so much going on and so much thought behind every action. At least for me, I have pre-rehearsed answers to some questions, and it's questions no one's ever going to ask me. It's things I ask myself, and then, I'm like, okay, I know myself really well. So because I know all that, when you come up to me and you're like very forward and not cautious, and if you accidentally, without even knowing it, challenge that belief, I'm going to get defensive. I was just looking at, there's 2 technical subtypes of STPD. Don't know much about it, but there is one where it's all about being passive aggressive and closing yourself off. That's the one thing I keep thinking back to, is I will immediately assume you're attacking me, but I'm very polite. The last thing I want to do is be rude, since I understand that's just how I feel. But I do get snappy when I feel challenged. And that's a very sensitive subject to bring up to doctors, because a lot of people, me included, don't see it as like a bad thing. It's just how we live. And some people won't even seek help for it. They just think they have depression or anxiety. It's just very touchy, going slow, being understanding. And sometimes we do not say what we mean, or like what we mean is lost in translation. I could be agreeing with you, but I'm doing it in like a backwards manner, because I can't agree with you. I feel so embarrassed to just come out and say I was wrong. Or if you are trying to teach me something or correct me, even in a polite way, I will just immediately shut down and just deny everything. So I can see why it's a multiple day thing. You need that time to step back and calm down. It's just being so careful and understanding the way we see the world will not line up with you. So even if you think you're explaining it crystal clear and we're not getting it, nothing against you, just give it time.
Thank you so much for that answer. And the next question is one I'm especially excited about. It's, what do you find the most joy in? So do you have intense interests, hobbies?
I do.
Yes.
I collect elephants. I love elephants. I have like 7 stuffed animals now that are elephants that I sleep with every night. It's part of like the whole luck thing. Elephants are special to me. They're my favorite animal for so many reasons, and that goes for as well as deer and swans on a lesser scale. With elephants, it's like the purple thing. Touching them gives me luck, and I'd say the opposite of an elephant is a hippopotamus, which no, it's a giraffe, definitely. Hippopotamus is a close second. I always have like a scale of how lucky things are. And in specific, Indian elephants are the best. They're the most lucky for me. This obviously differs. People will tell me, if I'm wearing a green shirt, does that upset you? And I'm like, no, that you can touch it. It's just me. But definitely anything with elephants, I cut out pictures of them from magazines and hang them on my wall. And then with the color purple, if it's purple, I will go out of my way to touch it on like a store shelf or to buy it and wear it. Other things that would be just like video games or TV shows that are pretty common for people to obsess over. I just put specific meaning into it, and I'm like, this is why I really like it. And especially if it's a show that has a lot of like lore or background and a lot of different intertwining things. Like when I was younger, I was really into Steven Universe. That was a really thought out show, and it was a really good cartoon. I was around when I was there when it first came out, and I used to watch season 1 exclusively over and over. And again, with Monsters University, that's another thing that I still love. It is such a good movie, and I think that the fact it discusses Mike feels so isolated because he's different. That really is nice. I can relate to that, even though he's green. So there's a lot of compromise, a lot of things that do bring me joy that also cross over into territory that would usually make me uncomfortable. So my affect is definitely constricted, but in a very odd way. I'm not going to be overly excited about little things. If I am excited about one thing I really like and I allow myself to feel excitement, because a lot of it is like opening a floodgate. I don't let myself feel something because it's not allowed by my imaginary rules. And then when I really like something, it is so intense, it's painful, and I need to go away and calm down. So definitely spikes of interest about things that I perceive interest in, and then also just random things.
I have a little bit of trouble with my mute button. Thank you for that answer. And on the flip side, what do you find to be the most challenging part of having STPD?
Because I'm so complex, I don't know if this goes specifically for STPD. It definitely crosses over into some OCD characteristics, but the color green, obviously, I went through years of therapy to get okay with touching it and handling it. I used to just completely reject it. It's good to the point that at my work, I handle it daily. You won't find it in my room. I will not willingly pick it up. And even at home, sometimes my parents, I still live at home. They accommodate me and they don't make me touch things that are green. Another thing I'd say that is really challenging, other than, well, this also goes for colors, but it's not specifically green, and numbers as well. I rank them as having meaning, and green is similar to 2. Well, 6 and 2. They both mean negative things to me. So if I see it, my mood will immediately drop. I've caught myself, catching angel numbers, which are numbers that are in successions of 3 of the same number. I'll see 222, and immediately I'm like, my smile drops. I lose my interest in the conversation. I shut down. I don't shut down. I withdraw, because that I perceive that as bad. And obviously, it's just a coincidence. I can understand that, but I just can't. I cannot get over it. That's really hard. And since that will change my demeanor based off nothing, it will make it hard to hold relationships. I'm already a very paranoid person. I wish I had friends, but I'm not really interested in going out and making friends and building a relationship. I'll hang out with anyone instantly and click with them instantly, and then just kind of let it fizzle out. So again, with long-term relationships, I don't really make a withstanding connection. And then if I am talking to someone and I'm like, yeah, I like them, but then I see a number or a color or even just any sign that I perceive, I'm like, okay, yeah, I should stop talking to this person. I'll tell them, hey, I should stop talking to you, and I'll leave. I'm very open with people. With my feelings, I'll be like, I'm nervous right now. I don't want to talk. And if they're someone I've been talking to for a while, I'll explain, it's really nothing. I'm just feeling nervous. Because a lot of people they understand that. I'm glad that even without me going into the specifics of, hey, I have this and this is why, they'll just understand something is upsetting me. And that's better than I've had in the past, where people are like, it's me, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's literally nothing you did. The only other thing I can think about is the anxiety that doesn't diminish. In the past, I went to driver's ed. That's a good example. And the 3rd day of going in, it was a week of it, I'd go into this class. I just couldn't go. I broke down in the car. The idea of going in, I could not get over that anxiety, even though I've done it 3 days in a row, and I had to do it the next 2 days, and I was fine. There was just something about it. I couldn't do it. And that's to the point where it interferes with real life. I couldn't go into class that day, and that counted against me. That doesn't happen often. But when it does, there's the only thing I can do. It's happened a couple times, and the only thing we found I can do is just go back to sit quiet and just calm myself down, because it's all internal. I need to sit and talk to myself and reason with myself that the anxiety isn't real. Like I said, I'm really well managed, and the medication I'm on works really great for me. I've been through therapy since I was really young, so I had the best possible chance of being well off, and I coped really well. There's not too much that I'm unable to handle at this point. So that's really great, especially while I'm progressing into the adult world and getting a job. I can't imagine if I still had the rumination and aversion to green, I would just have to quit my job. I just wouldn't be able to do it. So things that are difficult, I found, it's just easy if you work on it, if you just focus on it, except with the diminishing anxiety. That makes it hard.
Absolutely. And then I guess the last question is just, is there anything that you wanted to add that I forgot to ask about, or just anything else in general?
I'd say that people with STPD have a very strong sense of self. And I think that is because we are constantly thinking, and everything has a meaning. Everything goes back to something. That obviously is shown with like colors and numbers. I assign myself to one number and one color. Well, more than that, it's just really complex. And the fact that it is so complex and internal, I don't think, I'll ever be able to explain it to someone fully and them be able to think about it the same way I am. And that is the most lonely thing about it. I'm fine with being alone. I'm fine with having only like one friend. But the fact that no one is ever going to like see what's in my head and think like me, that's really sad. And even when I try to go and explain it to people, the fear of him just looking stupid, that is the only thing I'm afraid of. I don't care if people don't like me. I just don't want to look stupid. And me trying to explain, I think this because of this, and it's two completely unrelated things. Or I'll not even be explaining it. It will just come up in conversation and I get so embarrassed. And I'm like, how could I ever express this to someone? It's so, that's the most difficult part, that you're so unique, but you can't tell anyone. In the invisible rules, that's crazy. Other than that, I think you've done a really good job covering, the main bases and, how things have been growing up to this point and how I've been treated and what my perspective was on, having to leave school, because I am a complex case. And I feel like you always hear about just one disorder, but so many disorders are intertwined. They are coexisting. I think it's important that more people do talk about it, because all we can do is understand. And the only way we can treat things is by figuring out, how it works in their mind, or we're going to get nowhere. So really overall, thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk to you about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining and for sharing and for your time and experience. I appreciate it a lot.